open this computer. Okay, I think let's get the show on the road. I think we have most everyone. So thank you, everyone. It's great to see you here after not seeing people for a very long time, it feels like. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, especially our panelists. I know you've been teaching and now you're volunteering your hour this afternoon to kind of sharing your expertise and your knowledge with our students. So really, really is appreciated. And thank you to the students who, took us up on this opportunity to attend and connect with peers and colleagues. Last spring, we canceled the panel discussion because it caught us really off guard. COVID did, and we decided it's just too much at this moment, and so we chose not to offer it. And I'm really glad that this time around we felt prepared. We knew what to expect. We knew what we were doing, and we were able to really. I had a fantastic response from people that I reached out to present, and I was very overwhelmed and just so happy that so many people say, hey, I can do it. And then I had a really hard time. How do I narrow down, this list of amazing teachers who are all willing to share their time? So I'm very appreciative of all of this. So to kind of get us started, I just kind of want to go over how the discussion will play out. So we have 5 panelists. 3 of them are true alumni, which is really, really exciting for us to see our students come back and be part of this community. And I will be giving a brief introduction into our panelists in just a few minutes, but we have prepared some questions and Josh and I will be taking turns kind of presenting those questions to our panelists. Sometimes we may call on specific individuals, sometimes we'll just kind of open it up. And ideally we'll have two presenters address the question, the prompt, and if those 2 people could keep to 2 to 3 minute responses. If someone else would like to contribute, there's something else that they would like to add, by all means, speak up. We just ask that you keep it to about a minute or so that we can kind of keep the session to an hour. I want to be respectful of everyone's schedules. For students, our goal is that there will be some time left at the end. So hold on to your questions, jot them down, or maybe put them in the chat room. We are hoping to have about 10 minutes at the end, and at that time you can ask your questions. Okay, so we really want you to have an opportunity to ask what really is, important to you, and to really take advantage of this opportunity to reach out to our panelists. So with that, I think, I don't think I'm missing anything other like housekeeping things, but so I'll start by introducing our panelists. First off, we have Mandy Simpson. Mandy began her 17-year teaching career at East Valley Middle School in Nampa, teaching middle school math. She graduated from Idaho State University, and she's a former Nampa Education Association president. Mandy also taught mathematics and Introduction to Engineering Design for 6 years at Columbia High School. Outside of academics, Mandy has been involved in her school as a coach for volleyball, basketball, snow team, golf, and tennis. Currently, she's teaching at Capitol High School, and she also serves as the board chairperson for the Nampa School District. Up next, we have Sonia Galavis, who is an elementary education educator with an emphasis in bilingual ed and English as a new language. She completed both her master's and her PhD last May from Boise State, pursuing the curriculum and instruction. So congratulations to Sonia. That's a huge accomplishment. She has been teaching for 19 years, and for the past 8, she's been teaching 5th grade at Garfield Elementary. She has a lot of experience working in Title I schools, language diverse environments, EL classrooms, and more recently, working with refugee populations. In 2016, Sonia received the Industry's Excellent Educators Dedicated to STEM Award as well as the Idaho Education Association Marsha Nakamura Teaching Excellence Award. And in 2017, she was one out of 5 educators nationwide to win the NEA Foundation Awards for Teaching Excellence. And then now on to our alumni. We have Maddie Chinook, who graduated with a bachelor's in mathematics, secondary education from Boise State in May of 2019. She is the recipient, or she was a recipient of the Robert Noyce Teacher Scholarship. Currently, she's teaching 7th grade in her hometown at Emmett Middle School. Last year, she helped coordinate the STEM Night event in Emmett, which is an event that sought to introduce elementary students and parents to STEM fields to spark interest in pursuing careers in these areas. Mary was also involved in the College of Education's research study to increase retention rates for teachers in Idaho. Maddie continues to be a Boise State student by taking courses for professional development. We have Jericho Ball, who graduated from Boise State with a bachelor's in elementary education, TESOL ENL in 2019. She is teaching English and critical thinking in the Bridge program at Hillside Junior High. This is her first year teaching as a certified teacher for the Boise School District, but she did spend some time in Shanghai, China, teaching English. After she graduated, she taught children ages 3 to 12 using an immersive storytelling technique for the Disney English program. She loved the experience and would have loved to stay there longer, but COVID had different plans. She taught at Jefferson Elementary as a Title I school during her student teaching, and she was also a teacher's assistant for the Boise State Summer Academy for 2 summers. And looking back, one of the things that she really wishes she had pursued as a student at Boise State was study abroad opportunities. And last but not least, we have Yolanda Martinez, who graduated with a bachelor's in history and political science, secondary ed in May of 2020. She is a proud first-generation student who sought involvement in TRIO not only as a participant, but she also worked for the TRIO Upward Bound program as a residential mentor for 2 summer programs. Currently, she's teaching 9th grade history at Fairmont Junior High School, and she's also coaching JV girls volleyball. She has joined the Boise Educators Association, which has provided funding to take professional development trainings, and she will also be joining the AVID team at her school. So that is our group of panelists. I'm very excited, lots of experience, lots of really, really good knowledge. And so to get us started, I'll begin with the first question. A lot of students right now who are graduating, the one thing on their mind is, how am I going to get a job? And so I'd like to start the panel discussion by asking, what advice would you have for students when they begin searching, applying, and interviewing for jobs in the teaching field? And if I could have the most recent graduates address this first, that would be fantastic, as you recently went through that whole process.
Okay, I can go first. Sorry. Okay, so hello, my name is Jericho. I know my name says Wendy, it's my mom's computer, so sorry if that's confusing. But yeah, that's a great question, because my experience is a little unique, because I was in China teaching, and then COVID had me move back mid-year. So the school year was already started, so I didn't have that I guess, typical way of applying for a job through the Boise School District. So one piece of advice that I can give you is to network a lot. So I ended up when I came back, I just sent a bunch of emails to teachers I knew that I worked with at Jefferson, to professors that I had at Boise State, and to my liaison, and through them I found an opportunity to teach at Hillside, and it kind of just opened up for me. So if you have people out there that know who you are and what you can bring to a school, keep them around, keep in touch with them. While I was in China, I always kept in touch with them, making sure that we were, because I knew I was going to come back. So just to make sure that you keep people at bay because they'll help you. If you'll help them, they'll help you. So that's one piece of advice I have.
I can go next. So for me, when I was interviewing, what helped me was I met with the career fair to make the career center at Boise State to make sure my resume was good. And then I went to their career fairs, which were helpful because I got a couple job offers from going to those. But I really wanted to work in my hometown. So when I got the interview for my hometown, I made sure to write thank you notes to all the people who were on the who interviewed me. And I feel like that helped. And then when you're answering questions, just making sure like you're not giving generic answers, making them personal. And then I feel like it's okay to admit, for example, I feel like the question on classroom management is a struggle because we haven't actually had our own classroom. So I just said, I'm not going to be the greatest because I've never had my own classroom, but I'm willing to put in the work and talk to you and work with you to get to where I need to be for classroom management. So that's helped. And also attending the mock interviews that Boise State sets up. That was really helpful.
I also want to add a little bit on that as well. My situation was pretty different as well because I graduated in the middle of the pandemic. So they were actually in a hiring freeze and nobody had any idea what was going to happen or if anybody was even going to get hired. It was kind of up in the air. So that stressed me out for a little bit. But I did still utilize the resources that were offered to me. And the biggest ones I feel are, and if you are in your final year or in your internship year, definitely dip your foot into the substitute pool because you really get your name out there. Teachers start to like request you because they are familiar with you if you're in their building. And it's really nice as well because you can also have chat with the principal at the school that you're working with, have them come watch you when you are subbing, when you are student teaching, so that they can see you as well. And you can use them on your application as people like recommendations. And that really gets kind of, it's an attention getter. And that's what the district chairperson, I can't remember her name, but the person in charge of my district area, she said that looked really good when I put in my application that I had the principal at the school that I was student teaching at was one of the ones who put in a reference letter because he watched me teach and he was able to do something like that. So that is something that I highly recommend you do. And also they have kind of mock interview things at the district level as well. I know they did at the Boise School District. You can go in and they just kind of talk about the hiring process. And you start to meet principals there. There's principals that are there, there are teachers there. And there is other just kind of administrative people that kind of put it together, give you some tips on what to do when you are applying, what to do in your interview. And that was a huge like step forward for me when I attended that. They actually ended up doing just on the spot, come up and do an interview for us really quickly. And they randomly like just was like, all right, how about you? And I was freaked out, but I said, okay, I guess, why not? And afterwards, I was a little shy, but I went up, I did it. And afterward, I had 3 different principals actually come up and just introduce themselves to me and say, I'm in charge of this department. Like, I'm going to put in a really good word for you. Please put in an application. I would even like to just have you put me down as a reference. And it was literally just because I went up and talked. Like, it was super low risk and anything like that, but it was so helpful to just go to those meetings, be there. And that's really just getting your face familiar with other people within the district and making those connections that both Jericho and Maddie talked about as well. So really kind of making those connections and putting yourselves out there and embrace the uncomfortableness or the awkwardness or any of those things, because it is awkward and you will be put into situations where you're like, I don't know if I want to do this. But I think that's important and you have to push through that so that you can get the jobs that you are wanting.
Awesome. Thank you. Those really, really helpful. I'm taking notes as well to let students, because I'm definitely meeting with students now who are starting this process and are curious, like what should they be doing? Okay, I think Josh, you can take it over.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say hello to everyone and thank you for both our panelists and for our students for making time, carving out time this afternoon, evening. And I recognize just about everyone, but for a couple of you that don't know me, my name is Josh Barrows, and assistant director with our college program, TRIO college program. So good to see everyone again. So the next question, and actually before I do that, just a shout out to Adriana. Where's my clapping response to say thank you to Adriana for coordinating and organizing the panel, and we're happy to bring it back. We don't have our taco bar like we did 2 years ago with our in-person event, but hopefully next year. So the next question, how do you define success as a teacher, and what practices or strategies do you believe set you up for success throughout the academic year? And I would maybe for this question, lean on Sonia and Mandy as some of our more experienced educators.
Go ahead, Mandy.
I was going to tell you to go ahead. I think success for me as a teacher is just, of course, when students are learning and growing. And for me, that's not, on the ISATs or the SATs, but it's just in general, like we know where they are and where they need to be, but some of them don't even start close to where we want them to be right when they walk in our doors. And so knowing that my students are learning and growing is a huge success to me. I think some strategies for me that work is one, tough love. Like they need consistency for sure. And so being consistent and letting them know, like, here's the bar and here's the line and here's the expectations, and then sticking to it and holding firm to it. I think helps to teach kids more than anything, especially nowadays, where, especially in a year like this, where, right, everything seems so like, whatever, not a big deal. Like I got to show up for class, or no, I don't, as high school students right now. And so it's holding them to it and saying, no, you do have to show up for class online and you do have to do these things. That hasn't changed. And so holding them to those things. I think patience, though, and grace are sometimes hard, but they are like two of the most important things, I think, for your students and for yourself, to have patience and grace.
Mandy, you're awesome. Also, Mandy would never tell you about all the stuff she does to go above and beyond. Mandy's a dear friend of mine. I've known her for years, and I know with her students, because they've been virtual and for so long, and now just bringing in certain pods. Mandy also takes her preps and her lunchtime and her after school and her weekends to help those students in an equitable manner too. So it's like holding their feet to the fire, but Mandy also makes it possible for them to like meet those expectations. So yeah, hold their feet to the fire, but know that some kids are just going to need extra help. They're going to need time. They're going to need Mandy Simpson on their doorstep with the packet of work, being like, I'm here, it's happening, you're doing this. So I'll say that about Mandy. I would say that to build success in the classroom is going to be centered on the relationship you not only have with the student, but also with the home. So I'm going to give my rah-rah speech for home visits and family outreach as probably the most important move that I make as an educator in my classroom. So I often, if I'm giving speeches or I'm doing panels or whatever it is, a phrase, a term that I learned in my undergrad is in loco parentis, which it's a Latin phrase that means in place of the parent. And it's a legal term that's often used to talk about like who stands as guardian or in place of, the parent of a child. So that's how I see educators. For 6.5, 7, 8 hours a day, we stand in place of the parent with these babies, right? So when you take that yoke of like, I better be making really intentional decisions. I better be making the most decisive moves and calculated in a good way for love of the child as a parent would. And when I begin a school year, before this, before I ever have kids in, in chairs or on screen as it was this year, I'm reaching out to the families to build that partnership, because when you have an allyship with the home, you are building success. When I begin that relationship with the family, I have an advocate for me, for the kids, for things that I'm trying all year long. And that is that investment, either whether you're doing it with phone calls or whether you're going by the homes. For me, it's a home visit, like going to the home. And you enter with humility. You enter with like, you're the expert on this kid. I am so fortunate that I get to borrow your baby for a little bit. Help me be the best teacher for this child. And when you lead with that humility and you position them as the authority in their children's lives, the parents or guardian or grandparents, whoever's raising them, are like, okay, let me tell you about my kid. And you start to see the child in the way they see their kid. And it's a really empowering position to be in as an educator, because then I start to see like, oh, I need to talk, about this with the child, or these are some things that I can bring in to be culturally responsive to that child. And I also see some needs too, right? I mean, I'll be honest, where, I'll see like, baby's going to need some extra love because this is what's happening, right? And that's in those moments too, the family's going to let you know, like, here's where we might need some help. They hate math, which makes Mandy Simpson cringe, but they hate math because of X, Y, Z. And then I start to think my academic hat is going on, like, oh, they've had bad experiences in this, so I need to make this fun or engaging or whatever else. So your family, the families, is the biggest resource that's often untapped by educators. They're your people, they're your crew. So consider that investment, what will pay off throughout the year. And what that allows you to do is really teach in a more progressive way. So when I'm pushing up against the margins of like curriculum or whatever else, I know my families have my back because I include them. It's not just an email blast that God knows if anyone ever sees that. It's text messages, it's home visits, it's empowering the families, they have access to me. Become an ally and a partner with the families. I promise you will never regret it, and you will set yourself up for success, not only academically, but emotionally and socially with your babies. And then when your behaviors, as a side note, talking about classroom management, Madison, the behaviors go way down because I have the relationship, I have the buy-in of the families. And then there's a little bit of like, Juanito, I know where you live. I know mom is off with the cleaners at 5 o'clock. Do not make me call mom at work, right? And they're like, okay, that's true. So families.
Great, thank you very much.
Awesome. Okay. On to our next question. And again, I'd like to call on our recent graduates because this is about a little bit about reflecting on looking back at your second year for some of you. What do you know now that you wish that you knew at the beginning of your first year teaching? What were some of those like, oh, moments? And were there things, can you think of things that maybe could have helped you be better prepared for that? Maybe not, but if there are, what would they be?
I can go first. So for me, probably one of the biggest ones was creating boundaries, not emailing parents on the weekends, because then I just feel like it becomes a habit and they expect that. So trying to create better boundaries with that, unless it's like an emergency or something. I still do that sometimes, but I'm working on it. And then learning to say no, just because my first year, I would get asked to be like the advisor of this club and that club and a bunch of other things, and I would just say yes to everything. So prioritizing more and not saying yes to everything, learning to say no to some things. Don't hang out with negative staff, because I don't know if you've heard, you're the reflection of the 5 people you hang out with the most. So if you're hanging out with a bunch of negative staff, that's really going to affect you and burn you out. So hang out with positive people. And then one that I am still working on is don't take on your students' trauma. You can acknowledge it and like care for them, but you can't take it on yourself. And that's really hard to accept, but when you take it on yourself, it really burns you down. And so working on that.
I would like to add a little bit off of what Maddie said as well. I think kind of setting boundaries and like holding to those boundaries and disciplining, like staying consistent, like Mandy said at the beginning too, like discipline them and stick to that. I like, this is really new to me, and then being virtual and then online and then virtual again, I caught myself doing things where I'd say yes one day or I'd say no the other day, and then they'd be like, first period would say, oh yeah, Miss Martinez let us do this, and then third period is like, well, how come she never lets us do that? So that's something that I am trying, like now that we're going to be all day 5 days, I'm definitely going to use us coming back that first week to just kind of reset those boundaries and reset those rules and really stick to them. But also, I think being honest with my students has been such a huge thing for me that I wish I would have known at the beginning. There's some times where I would, you know, they'd ask me something and I would be all embarrassed to say, I don't know. And now I'm like, I don't know, you know, I don't know. And I think I read it in a book and I don't know, it could be wrong, but I think it was Aristotle, maybe it was Plato. One of them said, all I know is I know nothing at all. And now I tell them that all the time. I'm like, Google it. We have laptops, you have phones. Like, if we don't know, there's a multitude of resources for us to utilize so that we can know. So just being honest and upfront and just kind of holding to this, you know, the discipline standards you set so that you can keep control, because there is times where they have just eaten me alive. And it's like, I can admit that. And I know now I'm like, I cannot believe I did that. But knowing that and learning from that has been massive for me. And just one more thing, and I hate to be just kind of like a negative person in this aspect, but just kind of knowing that anything is possible. Like this is my first year teaching, and in my first year teaching, it's been insane, but I had a student pass away and I never like prepared for that. So prepare for anything, because anything comes your way as a teacher. There's so much. So just prepare yourself and practice self-care, biggest one, which at the beginning I was like, oh, I'm good, I don't need it. I'll make it through. And you need self-care. Don't check your emails on the weekends. I learned that real fast, real quick. Because sometimes you just read emails over the weekend and your whole Saturday and Sunday are now ruined. So 2:30, 3 o'clock, whatever time you're off, do not check your email after that. And you will be incredibly grateful for it when you don't. But that is what I've got.
I completely agree with everything Yolanda and Maddie said, but just to add on to what they said, so for me, I always knew that teachers play a big role in a student's life, right? That's obvious, but I didn't realize the impact that you can have on a student until I actually started teaching. With anything from little to big, even your attitude can totally change the whole vibe in your classroom. If you're not having a good day, or if you just got really bad news, your students can feed off of that, and they know. They're really smart and intuitive, and then it affects their lives in more ways than you can really imagine. So one of the things that I wish I knew is how to be a better advocate maybe for my students. When I see things, you'll see things with your students that are really hard and really upsetting, and you'll see things that your students need help with in school, outside of school, things that you don't think are fair for them, things that you know that they deserve but they don't have. So learning how to be an advocate for them and knowing how to get resources, get tools, get all those things that will help your student in any way that they can is major. So yeah, I didn't know how to do that. So I'm still learning. This is my first year as a certified teacher. I'm still learning the ropes, but one thing I can tell you is, find your people. There are so many people out there who are willing to help and who want to help. You just have to go out there and find them. So I don't know. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And yeah, Yolanda, like taking the expression and turning it into a mantra with your students. All right, so the next question, and I guess to just kind of open this up to anyone who would want to address it. What do you believe are the most important qualities that a teacher would want to cultivate throughout their career?
Do we just want to list them off? Patience, love, kindness, balance, self-care. I mean, right, teachers? I just think if we were to create a board of like all of the things, it's all the characteristics you want to cultivate as a good human. They're no different, literally, right? And so that's sort of when you think of what your role is as an educator. We are blessed to be in a profession that has the most lasting impact other than a parent. Like, tell me a profession who has the reach and, you know, breadth and like scope that educators do. There isn't. And so, you know, I'm a champion for public education because I think there's nobody else that does what we do. And we have that blessing and that calling to help raise human beings. So when you think of those things you want to cultivate, you want to be a good human. So all of the characteristics that make you a good human and make you empathetic to the human condition, that's what you want to cultivate, because you're helping to raise a generation of people.
I think, of course, all the ones that Sonia said, but my first on my list is humility, right? Like that's, I think if we all can learn a little bit of humility, and I can cultivate that in my classroom, I think it creates like this culture of respect though as well, that, and I think I see it a lot in a math class, right, where people don't feel comfortable. I'm not very good at this. I don't always know the answer, and hear that a ton, and thinking they have to know the answer is to me kind of this idea that like, no, you got to be humble. Like sometimes we don't know the answer, and we definitely don't know them all, right? I think like Yolanda said, like there's lots of questions out there that we don't know the answers to, and if we can teach kids and an entire group of people to have humility with each other, it's huge.
Something I have learned this year is to love and understand. So a big question that I ask myself whenever something isn't going how I thought it would, or something is wrong, I always try to ask myself, I have to stop myself before I speak, right? Before I say anything that's I will regret later. And I have to ask myself, okay, why? So why is this student sleeping in class every day? Why is this student triggered after third period? Why is this student not completing homework? There are so many reasons to why that particular student may be doing this specific thing. And instead of, I don't know the right word to say, instead of going at them and asking them why, or do this, do that. First ask, you know, how can I help? What's going on? Get to know them. And then and also another, Sonia reminded me how important it really is to build relationships, not with just your students, but also their families, because those are really where a lot of the whys are answered. So get to know, build those relationships, and think to yourself before you react right away.
That's all great advice. My wife, who's an educator, she teaches middle school, always has this goal of making 10 home calls on a Friday afternoon after her day is done. And if she doesn't meet her goal of making 10 home phone calls, I hear it all night long. Why couldn't I meet my goal? So thank you very much, the three of you.
Yeah, and I, honestly, thinking back, when I think about like those really influential people in my life, they have, outside of my family, my parents have been teachers, and it was who they were as human beings, like not like this person that taught me something, but like who really made me feel seen. And those were the people who were so, and I always remember them very fondly. So again, one of those reasons why I just love, the job that teachers do, and the impact that they can have on students, because, it's amazing with just kindness and love and, just acceptance and understanding, how you can change someone's perspective. So awesome. All right. So the next question, and this is a fun question because there's such a wide range of experiences and involvement. So I don't want anyone to leave anything out. So if more people have to talk, that by all means do that. But this question is about professional development and leadership opportunities that you've had experience with as a teacher, that have been instrumental in your own development. And so I'll just open it up to anybody, talk about like those experiences that really helped you continue your growth. And keep that mindset of continuing as a student, you're a learner.
I have not been a teacher long, but I was in trio when I was at Boise State, and the trio teacher prep program as well. And I actually got to go to that trip that Adriana was just talking about with teaching tolerance, my last 2 years at Boise State. And they were so huge and played such a critical role in the way that I feel like I am teaching, and the methods that I use, and just kind of the reflection strategies. But really what we learned was just kind of understanding and knowing your biases and how to keep them out of the classroom, or how to be a teacher who teaches both diversity and equity, and keeping kind of like a neutral base, or just making sure that you are teaching all of history, but also understanding that we all have biases and knowing how to manage those. And once I did step into the classroom, like that was kind of something that I immediately started to pick up on. Obviously it was a little bit harder when we were online, because I can't see half of their faces and I barely know them. So it was a little bit more difficult. But when I got into the classroom, I really got a sense of things that I knew that I wanted to incorporate. Specifically when we were talking about Christopher Columbus, the biggest thing being a history teacher is showing perspective and just letting students kind of pick for themselves. Like, this is one side, this is this side, these are the facts. What, like laying it out. I just want you to know it all. Whatever you believe, whatever you think, totally up to you. I'm just presenting to you this information, do with it as you will, kind of thing. But also understanding my biases, and not necessarily in my aspect of like having, favorites or anything like that. But one thing that I did notice, and from those workshops I really was able to pick up on, was I grew up with all brothers. So I have 2 brothers, and we were always just kind of rowdy and noisy. And to me, like, that was fun, right? Getting loud boys all around you, that was fun. And in my classroom, and one of my classes specifically, I have a group of boys, and they're great students, but they're loud and they're rowdy. And for me, I didn't quite notice until I took a step back and I was like, wait a minute, this is totally ringing a bell. But I didn't realize that maybe to other students, right, them being rowdy and loud and fun was kind of a distraction. Because to me, it was always like, oh, like that's normal. That's what I always knew. That's what I grew up. Those were the friends that I had. And then I started to notice and think back, like, okay, I feel that way because that is that's how I grew up. But that doesn't mean that every single student in my class is going to feel that same way. And I need to address that. And I need to ensure that I am making this a learning environment that everybody feels comfortable and that everybody is able to learn. Like, if them being loud and rowdy and fun, or whatever I think is fun, right, might not make it accessible for Joey in the back to learn, who needs something a little bit more quiet and a little more controlled. So it really kind of gave me perspective and getting a chance to see like my own biases in the classroom, but also getting to step back and put that into play. So I really enjoyed that.
For me, one of the biggest influences, or something that helped me, was Boise State offers a lot of induction supports. Like if you were in the I Do Teach program, or there's other ones too. But for me, the induction supports really helpful, especially your first year, because you're with a bunch of new teachers. So if you don't have new teachers at your school, you're able to meet with them there and share experiences and like brainstorm problems and get advice and work through things together. One of the induction supports that I've been a part of for the last 2 years is really cool because they ask what we want to learn about, and then each class is like chosen off of what we chose. So we've done grant writing, parent communication, hybrid learning, like just different things. And so that's been really cool. Sonia and Mandy were at one of them when we talked about the teacher union, and that was really cool just to get exposure to that stuff. So that's been really helpful. So I would suggest joining induction support if you can.
I would just to touch on Maddie, and I think Sonia and I are both advocates for joining your local education association. One, I know the IEA has made it a big, goal of theirs to provide professional development as things have changed in the state. You guys wouldn't know it, but in October, there used to be training and in-service days for teachers in October that were huge, and those have gone away as money's dwindled, and the IEA has really stepped up. But it's how I've met amazing teachers like Sonia who have completely changed the way I look at things and do things in my classroom, and you can learn and grow from those other educators around you. I am going to recommend, just because of the way I'm very much entrenched in the politics. I sit on a school board, and I'm going to tell you, make your credits count, get your master's, because that's where the funding comes from, especially if you're going to stay in the state of Idaho and teach. And so keep those things in mind as you're working on things, like how can you make them apply and be very much credits that'll work for you.
Thank you. So we have a few more questions. I just looked at the time, so maybe if we can get along, just move on, unless someone had something else really pressing to mention about professional development. Just shameless plug, we are offering that teaching tolerance. There will be 2 talks late in March, and I just sent that email out, and that opportunity is actually being extended to our alumni. So anyone who's interested in attending those workshops can do that. They will be here in the morning and in the afternoon. We are contracting folks who work with them and who are familiar with the material, and they will be bringing that content to you via Zoom.
All right, so the next question, and I guess I should preface this by just saying that it looks like Yolanda, Jericho, and Mandy have experience with professional learning communities. And so the question is directed towards the 3 of you. Are you currently engaging with a professional learning community? And obviously the 3 of you mentioned that you have been or currently are. What impact has it had on your preparation and planning?
I'll just say, when it's done right, it's had a big impact on things. My experience, though, unfortunately, has been that people think like PD is more PLC. And so it's hard, I think, for people to change their mindset of what this means and how we're doing things. But I know when it's been effective, I sat down with and actually most effective was not a huge group, but a group of 3 other math teachers. We were all teaching the same exact class. We were giving common formative assessments. We had set ahead of time what those goals and outcomes we wanted to be, how we were going to know when our students had met those, and then really taking a look together at each other's students' work and sorting it and going, where are these students at? And if they're not where we need them to be, what are our next steps to help them get there? And just being really focused in what strategies we were going to use with different kiddos depending on where they were to help them get to where we wanted them to be. And then also it made it possible to really easily extend beyond and do extensions for those students that had met that goal and were ready to stretch and learn a little more, where it didn't look to the students like, well, I have to do something different than so-and-so over here. Like, why am I doing that? It just kind of was this feeling of everybody's kind of doing different things, and those are the strategies that we're going to use to help them get to their goals.
I would really agree with a lot of what Mandy said. I think it's really cool when you get to work in those smaller groups, especially with teachers that are teaching the exact same content area as you are, because you really get to reflect on, like, the nice thing with my professional learning community is we each have a class where I get to watch him teach and he gets to come watch me teach. And we're at very different points. He has been teaching for 6 years and I'm a new teacher, right? So it's really cool. And we both offer each other a lot of instructional feedback, which helps us a lot to better our lesson plans, but it also gives us a really good opportunity to pick up on student engagement as well and kind of gauge like what areas maybe we need to work on or how we can further engage them, or what kinds of things we can do to, kind of like Mandy was saying, basically differentiate the kind of work that each student is needing and really get to meet their needs per watching and learning from one another, and really getting to collaborate and reflect on the lessons and the plans that we have kind of thought out, and give us even time to, next time we do it, like, we're going to edit this, or we're going to change this, or how could we do it in a different way next time to avoid the issues that maybe we ran into this time. So it really helps the reflection process, and really helps to differentiate for specific needs that students might have.
Yeah, we do PLC once a week, and I find that it's very, very helpful, especially as a first year teacher, because it gives you that time and the opportunity to ask for help if you need it. So yeah, collaborating and working with other teachers in your department, and sometimes whole group PLCs with everyone in your building, it's super, super helpful to get new ideas, have teachers send you tools, have teachers tell you new strategies to try, just to get you set up for that week even, or month, or whatever it is. But yeah, it's been very helpful to prepare me for my future lessons.
Thank you. So switching gears a little bit, and we kind of talked about this, it's come up already, mental health. And so one of the many roles of teachers includes supporting the mental health of their students in the classroom and in school, but we don't often hear those discussions regarding the mental and emotional well-being of teachers themselves. And this has resulted in two major issues, teacher burnout and a shortage of skilled teachers. How have you made your well-being a priority? What would you recommend new teachers do to build longevity in the profession? And open to anyone.
Therapy. Straight up. I'm a huge proponent of, like, keeping your poop in a group. You can say it another way too. So I see a therapist, and I'm super open about it. And I think we've got to remove that stigma of that, like, oh my God, they see somebody. I have amazing friends. Mandy's probably one of my best and closest friends. And I may send her a text that's like, what the actual, you know, and she's my person in that regard in so many ways. Like, and I'm for her too. We'll call and have a good cry. Like, that's us. She's my crew. However, there is a time and a place for professional intervention, folks. You cannot teach with your whole heart, body, soul, and not have a person you can process with. I don't know how anybody would do it. And so if we're trying to normalize and destigmatize like mental health, getting help, where are those resources? I think we need to be more open about it. So I see my person, twice a month. It keeps my crap in order. That's a person who can call me out. That's a person who can be like, Galavis, we've been here before, you know? And it something that I process a lot of my like educator-ness with. And so don't be afraid of having a counselor, having a person. Nothing wrong with that. Lots of teachers I know, colleagues, right? They get a little help with if you have to take medicine. Again, these aren't things we talk about, right? I'm saying it out loud. You may need that help. So what, right? Get the help you need to be able to do the job you need to do. This is a very stressful profession. I'm just going to say it, but it's manageable if you know, seek the resources, find some balance, make yourself a, you know, a priority. And someone else mentioned, you know, find your crew. Mandy's my crew. But like I couldn't do these things, you know, without those close friends. If you have a partner, you know, a person that you love, family, lean on your family, but don't be afraid to take care of yourself.
I think really building off of what Sonia said as well is asking for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help when you are at work. I like for a while I was like, no, there's so much stigma about asking for help, and I just didn't do it. And I was to a I'm so sorry. My dog is like, here I am. I was to a point where I was really just like thinking I didn't even like this anymore. And that's when I was like, I'm not doing it right. You know, so I had to ask the teachers in my buildings, make friends, make those connections, but also set those boundaries. And it was actually another colleague of mine that told me after I emailed her once, or I texted her at night and I said, hey, I have a student who wants to video chat me and it's Saturday afternoon, you know, and she goes, first of all, do not check your email on the weekends. And that was, you know, the biggest thing for me is to set those boundaries and really try and like take care of myself first. If that means, you know, I'm going to stay a little bit later so I can sleep in and get to school a little bit later, just so that I can sleep and I feel better about it, then so be it. Right. And it's just finding a routine and getting in a groove of things. For me, it's really been my physical health is something that I just feel so good doing and taking care of, that's my way of finding that inner peace. So I try and go to the gym 3-4 times a week. I don't always go for a long time, but even 30 minutes on the treadmill or 20 minutes on the elliptical is just showing up and being there. Just taking time for you, kind of like Sonia said, whatever that may be, whether it's medicine, whether it's therapy, maybe you are somebody who's like, you know what, I just need to have a beer or I just need to have a glass of wine, right? And I think just taking that time, like it's okay to close your laptop, turn your emails off, and just sit and watch Netflix or read a book, go outside, walk your dog, but really just taking that time for you. And don't feel guilty about it, because we give a lot and we do a lot, and it's not going to go away. And that's just part of the job. But you need to know how to prioritize your time and feel comfortable and don't feel bad for taking care of yourself.
It's okay to ditch the bag of good intentions every once in a while. Don't carry it around with you, and make realistic goals. Don't say I'm going to work on this then and then avoid it and feel guilty about it. Make a goal when you're actually going to do it, and then don't feel bad that you're not doing it and you're going to go do something else instead for you.
That's all really, really good advice. Make sure that yourself is a priority, that you are a priority. So Adriana, if it's okay, just for time, should we call an audible and just turn it over to I think we had 2 more questions, but turn it over to our students to see if they had any questions for our panelists.
Yeah, if students have burning questions, this would be a good time. I know we're trying not to go over the time too much, but we might have to go just a smidgen over, if that's okay with everyone. Are there questions that students are, want to do follow up based on what they've heard today?
I have a little bit of one. I'm currently student teaching right now at one of the high schools. We're going back all in person after spring break, and I'm really worried because I am not used to having them all in the classroom. Do you have any advice into because they haven't had any full class in a while, and I'm really nervous because I've got one half of the class that's really quiet and I have one half of the class that's really loud, and I'm I have no idea how to plan for it.
So I would hit the reset, put your academics on the shelf for just a little bit and do first day procedures like you would have done in August. You're going to open it back up. This is first day of school again. So setting boundaries, reviewing procedures, building community, icebreakers, getting to know you, like dial it way back. I know we want to be like, we're already this many units behind or whatever, but I would suggest dialing it back, building community, building teamwork in the classroom, building that relationship, and then move forward.
I agree. I think it's important to, and you kind of touched on it, I think you realize it, that they're not going to have the stamina to last through the day with that many people. So you get, I mean, you really have to dial it back and look at what do kids need, where are they at, right? They're going to be in different places. Some are going to be super excited to be all back with their friends. Some are going to be super nervous and anxious about being all back with everybody. But it is really about, yeah, it's like a fresh start. I feel like I call things 51st dates a lot, but this school year, every time we restart and do something different, it feels like 51st dates for, or yeah, 51st dates for me, where it's just brand new. It's like we've never done this before, and we got to kind of start over, and we do need to put those academics to the side, like Sonia mentioned, and really focus on those relationships and building those kids up so they can be successful within their last weeks of this year.
Really quickly, I know they both mentioned some really great strategies, but I am struggling with the same thing. I have some classes where I have 20 kids on my gold days, and then I have 4 on silver days. And so I was just straight up with them. I kind of just gave them a heads up, like, hey, there's a lot of you, and there's 4 more that are joining us, but they're very quiet and they like the quiet and they like to do their own thing. So we're going to be doing a lot of give and take. And then I told my little class the same thing, like, it's going to be different. There's going to be things that you are not used to. We have been quiet. We have been little. We've been kind of independent, and it's not going to be that way anymore. And we're just going to have to embrace that and embrace the uncomfortable. Like, things are changing, but we're getting back into a groove of things, and we're just going to have to roll with it. We're all learning, and we're all in this together.
Any other questions?
I had a quick question for Sonia. I know you said you do house visits and stuff. When do you usually plan?
When do I do them?
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, home visits have been done for decades. So I would encourage you to look. I first learned home visits through Head Start when I was working in a migrant community. Head Start does, they know how to do them right. I do them before the school year even starts, right? We have our class list, you know, beginning of August, and I start making those calls, but I know there's all different ways to do them. I know teachers who do them like throughout that first quarter. You want to do it towards the beginning of the year because that's like your foundation, right, that you're setting. So I know teachers who will do like a couple, you know, each week and just chip away. But for me to start the year off, I mean, it's like a heavy investment. I'm putting 8, 10, 12 hours in a week because I'm kind of like the cable repair person. I'm like, will you be home Thursday between 1 and 4? And then I just kind of, you know, I stop by and I hit them. I mean, I'm taking a full day and going around. But I do all the calls, set it up. I try not to do pop-ins. I'm not a fan of the pop-ins. So I try to always get, you know, have a phone call. But beginning of the year, if you can't do them before school starts, hit it hard in that first month. It's your evenings, it's your weekends. But again, that payoff is huge, huge, I promise. And if you need any help, you know, Adriana, she'll give our emails, I'm sure, our contact. I would love to help, Leslie. Like, that's my jam. If you want me to go with you, if you want to go on one with me, like this year, let's do it. Like, I'd love to model that. It's really powerful.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, I'll definitely be reaching out.
You betcha.
One more question. There's a question that I really would like to ask, and I don't know how everyone is feeling. about a few more minutes. And totally ups or down if not, cool. I don't want to put anyone. Okay. All right. So we do have a question. Josh, if you want to ask the question about, that you were set to.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
came up with that question. I think is fantastic. So.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, I was just curious. What does diversity, equity, inclusion mean to you in your role as an educator? And if there's anyone who really wants to jump in on it, please do, just to open it up.
I feel strongly about this, but I'm going to shut up for a second because I tend to do that. Does anybody in the panel want to go first?
I was just trying to type in the chat, Galavis. We want to hear from Galavis on this one for sure.
Okay, here are my thoughts in a nutshell on DEI work. After we as a society had witnessed the murder of George Floyd in the summer of the shutdown, and social media had taken over, and people were there were rallies and protests and people taking to the street, and there was a woman who had a sign, and it was blasted all over social media, that said, all mothers were summoned when George Floyd called for his mama. And in that moment, and I get emotional even thinking about it, in that moment, as I was trying to process as a human, as a mother, as an educator, I was like, all educators are now summoned to this moment of racial inequity, systemic racism in schools that have been propagated by schools, when we have seen some of the most dangerous, toxic, visceral language, not only on social media, but in the streets, from racists that have been elevated in our society. Those are public school folks. I don't know how else to say it, right? I'm like, those folks all went to public schools. So what is our call in that? For us to ignore this call at this moment for doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work, to ignore it as an educator is unacceptable. So how are we going to embrace DEI work? And because, I sit on every committee for DEI work at a building, at the district, here, there, everywhere. I think educators are scared, right? To push the envelope, find a way, folks, find a way, whether that's reading a picture book that sparks good conversations with kids. If you can push a little bit further and actually do some like racial equity and talking about diversity as a sense of inclusiveness and humanness, and that we may be able to restore our collective conscience. If you can push a little bit farther and make connections with groups that are doing this incredible work in Boise, in the Treasure Valley, I would encourage you to check out Inclusive Idaho. They have a profound social media presence out there, but they do outreach and PD within schools. Find your crew who's willing to have these DEI conversations with you as well, who's going to be in the trenches with you. Pick critical literature, find out who's got critical ed, the Zen Education Project, Teaching Tolerance, as Adriana said. There's so many people doing critical work out there. Borrow, steal, read, wrestle with it, and own your own crap in it, right? Dr. Cornell West said that we cannot dismantle the isms without recognizing the homophobe within you, the racist within you, the sexist within you. I have no problem with folks that think they're woke or whatever, but you got to own your shit. I don't know how else to say it. How have I contributed to systemic racism? When did I turn a blind eye? When did I forego a conversation? When did I not want to, unpack that with the kid because God, we were late for lunch already? In those moments, take a breath, take space, give it the credit it's due. This is the work, folks. This is what you're called to do. Yes, and teach Pythagorean theorem. Mandy Simpson, there's some, you know, yes, teach grammar principles, but we are raising human beings. If we want a better society, we better model a different way of instructing. Amen, that's it.
Anybody else? Sonia, thank you very much. Very, very powerful words. And I just completely agree. I think it's a lot of dedication, commitment, and there's no single one expert on any of this. We all have to work on ourselves. We all have to think about how we enter into our spaces and be better at what we do. So thank you very much. Very powerful stuff.
I think if anything too, in your curriculum, if you are able to find books or documents or research or ways to incorporate voices of color or voices who have been swept under the rug, then you should do your absolute best to do that. I think being a history teacher right now, it's so much fun, and there's so many ways that you can make those connections and reach out to students, showing perspective, but also talking about things that always got swept under. And for me, it's always, you know, talking about the ways in which we've kind of like oppressed minority voices when we talk about Native Americans or indigenous groups, right? I never learned about those things growing up. Or when we talk about ways in which we are a system that was created under, you know, racism and taking over, you know, oppressing people basically, and talking about that and being open about that and understanding, yes, this happened and we should address that. So if that's something that you are teaching, just make sure to be open about it. Don't sweep it under the rug, because doing that is what's causing, or what caused the way we are now. So being open and being honest, and you're going to put yourself in uncomfortable situations, and that's just part of it. And I saw this quote one time, and it said, if learning about history is bringing you pride and joy and happiness, then you're probably not learning about history. It should make you uncomfortable and angry and question things. And that's what I tell my students, because there's lots of times where we say things or we're talking about things and students get mad. They're like, well, what, you know, like that was George Washington. Why, you know, he was so great. And it's like, yeah, he was, but he also did X, Y, Z. So just being open and honest, and try to amplify voices that maybe have been swept under the rug.
One thing I'd like to add is something I have recently learned and started trying in my classroom is asking 2 simple words. So trying to combat during just normal discussion, I'm not up here teaching or telling them what to do or think or trying to influence them in any way. It's just simple interactions that sometimes I'll overhear students talking, and then just 2 simple words. So they, who. So a lot of times we'll hear kids talking, you know, they hear things in the news, they talk about things outside of school. An example, I heard some students talking, you know, oh, they're just racist, you know, oh, they who? And then they think, they, like white people. Oh, so all white people are racist? And then they go, oh, well, not all white people. So you just go on. So then you think, okay, so some people, and then just they who. It gets them thinking. No matter what they're talking about, the context, it gets them thinking critically about, okay, what are they actually saying? What do they believe, and what are the biases that they have inside too? So I've been trying it, and it's been really interesting to see how students react to that question.
Thank you, Jericho and Yolanda, for chiming in there as well. Anyone else want to add to that?
I just want to add, I think I came at this from a slightly different perspective, in the sense that I looked at it like based on what I've seen as I'm teaching mathematics. And I think typically mathematics, our system has set up a system that has not been inclusive at all, right? It's like, let's weed out the kids who don't know how to do this stuff very well, who are struggling in mathematics. We're gonna weed them out, and we're gonna put them over here. And the kids who are doing like super well, we're gonna we're going to move them up to this class right here. And it brings this divide. And so then what I've seen is, you know, nobody probably really wants to teach my class load. It's hard, but it's because I choose to. And I primarily teach special ed students, ELL students. And unfortunately, what most districts, or the 2 districts I've been in and other districts I've seen, they sometimes group these groups together because they think understanding's not there. And to me, it's one of those things that nobody wants to talk about, where I'm like, no, honestly, like you are grouping these kids together and you are not allowing them to have the same access to education that everyone else in the system is allowed to. And so when you want to talk about it, and nobody wants to hear that, right? There's not an administrator that wants to hear me say, like, we're totally being racist and we are separating these kids out and we're doing this. And so I keep trying, like Sonia said, it is the fight we have to fight. And so I keep fighting and I keep trying. But in the system, how it is I raise that bar for my kids in here. In my classroom, I set that bar and I say, here's where we're going to go. Because in all reality, I could teach a lesson to a kindergarten student, to a junior high student, to a high school student, and a calculus student around the same problem. And they all would just solve it different ways, right? So we need to do that, and it's taken a long time for me to get to a place where I can teach something over that broad of a spectrum of learners. But it really, even getting to that piece where every kid we're going to include in that class, and we're not going to push kids out and say, nope, you can't do this, you need to be in this other class, or you need to do this other thing. As you gave us this question, I really focused and thought about that piece of just what our system does and things that we need to fight back and say, no, this isn't okay. This needs to change, right? And I wasn't always that way. I was just like, I don't think this is right, but I'm gonna teach these kids anyway. And it's taken me a long time to get to a place where it's like, no, this needs to change, and I got to have a plan and a focus for how can we make this change for all kiddos, but specifically right now in this moment, these particular kiddos.
Final thought. At the end of the day, we're not teaching content, we're teaching humans. So just to keep in mind, we're teaching humans.
I like it. Thank you. Well said, everyone. And I think Sonia just added in the chat box that there is actually a discussion. I don't know. So you know what time that is happening? Is that later this evening?
It's 6:30. Yeah.
6:30.
But she has
inclusive.
Yeah, so that web link, they're doing it looks like every Wednesday at 6:30, having these conversations. It's meant to be for educators to have DEI conversations. So if maybe, Josh, if you could grab that link, and then, I know folks, we've all had a long day, but it sounds like it's a 6:30 p.m. Wednesday conversation, and the gal leading the discussion is Jessie Levin. And I'm going to drop her email in the chat. I know her well enough to know she would welcome emails or reach out if you're wanting DEI materials, if you want to advocate for PD in your building, if you want book recommendations. She's good folk. So
That's great. Thank you. And maybe Adriana and I could chat afterward about posting some of these resources for everyone who's here and who's not here this evening. So thank you, everyone. And thank you for hanging around a little bit longer. Adriana, do you want to wrap up any other comments?
No, as always, it's always a great, for me, who is not a teacher, is always such a amazing just to get to hear the perspectives and, what people are doing to create a better world. So any work that you do to to move that way. It's really appreciated, because I know we all want to live in a world that is just, right, and that we all feel good about living in. So thank you, everyone who participated, everyone who attended. It's been great hearing you. Thank you for letting us kind of push past your time. I know I tried. I was really trying to be mindful of that, but these are great conversations. And this last topic, I didn't feel like it was something to leave out, especially given the role that teachers play. So I think it was really important to talk about this. With that, I would say, thanks. And if if you're okay with us tapping on your shoulder in the future for future events, I will be sending an email asking if you'd be interested in participating in an event like this again in the future. I'm always, looking looking for amazing teachers that want to participate. And for our current students, this is something that we hope you will join us once you become your educators and you become the voices out there to come and share your knowledge and expertise. So thank you to our alumni for coming and talking about your first or 2-year experience out there. Anything else you want to add, Josh?
No, I just want to say thank you to our panelists for the time very much, and to all of our students for making it out this afternoon, evening now. So thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.